We have some absolutely wild breaking news that we need to cover, which is that Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy are no longer working for Bungie. If you don't know who they are, then you obviously have been very much out of the loop. Luke Smith is the executive creative director at Bungie. He has worked on so many different projects, and Mark Noseworthy is actually the VP of Destiny as well. So these two guys are absolutely some of the pillars of Destiny. And now Pete Parsons is still there, still working at the company at the time I'm recording this video. Obviously, a lot of people have been calling for him to leave or for him to retire, but we actually have these two retiring. And this news comes to us with a ton of other news. I'm going to give you a breakdown of all the biggest bullet points. So that way, if you haven't been staying connected on Twitter or everywhere else, well, because you're subscribed to this channel, you can stay up to date on all the news as advertised. So we also have some big news that has come to us from various different sources. That first one was from Jeff Grubb in regards to Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy actually leaving. They haven't updated their Twitter bios just yet. We'll actually have to get some notice from them. Obviously, this news is being broken to us from people that are on the inside, that ex-Bungie employees letting us know that these two have left. Supposedly, they left with the loss of the Payback project, which was meant to be a sort of like spin-off type game. It wasn't technically meant to be Destiny 3, but Bungie actually canned that project well before this, and it actually wasn't due to the recent layoffs and stuff like that that they decided to can it. That project was canned, and apparently they decided to go and part their ways around that time. And with this PlayStation acquisition now, they have fully left. They're gone now. They're not working with Bungie anymore, or at least that's what's reported so far. That's the information that I've seen presented to me from various different sources. The next part is that we're going to be getting in Destiny 2 2 DLCs per year, and they're going to be called content packs. Now, ordinarily we get like one big one every year, like annually, right? And like Witch Queen is a good example, Lightfall is a good example, obviously the Final Shape we just experienced, stuff like that. But we're going to be getting 2 DLCs, and they're going to be kind of on a smaller scale. And then within those 2 DLCs, there's going to be 2 seasons is what it's called. And this is all speculation at this point in time. Obviously, there's a lot of former Bungie employees spilling the beans on so much different stuff, and then there's also various different leaks going around. And you know, you can't trust all the information that gets thrown around, but it is important to note that this has been thrown around by various different sources and has a decent amount of credibility. They're going to be doing different rally events during this time as well, so it looks like they're going to be doing a complete restructuring of how they're doing things. And they did mention seasons, which sounded weird because I was like, aren't we on to episodes now? Like, what are we talking about with seasons? But I think that we have the years divided into 2 6-month periods, and each of those 6-month periods is divided into 2 seasons, or AKA 2 episodes, which would be roughly, you know, three months long or so. And then we have a different story and a different narrative within each of those, or at least that's the way Destiny 2 is going to be moving forward from these various different leaks and sources that are given by, again, ex-Bungie employees, etc. Then we also have a big issue, which was that Bungie overstated their financial prospects, which is that a lot of people are pointing the finger at Pete Parsons and others, saying that, you know, because Bungie has for big success with Destiny 2 and they have Marathon cooking and going to be a big success as well, and all these other gaming projects, that they're basically able to sell a much higher price tag to Sony for that plus $3 billion price tag, which obviously profited a lot of these guys a ton of money. And now in retrospect, it's obviously wasn't quite the right, you know, they were sold a lemon of sorts, right? Because a lot of those game projects are now tossed in the can or put aside, and a lot of those people that were working on those projects, of course, are laid off. Like if you're working on a game and that game is no longer going to be made, well, then you're getting laid off or moved to a different department. So a lot of people are roasting and criticizing Pete Parsons and others, saying that they overstated their financial prospects, that Bungie said or claimed that they could handle more than they could, and that they were worth more than they actually are valued at. So we'll have to get maybe an updated Bungie evaluation after all the dust is settled for this. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the $3 billion mark, but obviously Sony is taking more power now within the company, and that leads to these 2 guys leaving as well. Then we also have a big issue, which was, or a smaller issue, I don't know how much I want to make a big deal of this, but it was that Final Shape actually sold fewer copies than Lightfall. This has become a big topic. And the reason why this has become a big topic as well is because it took extra 4 months just to get the Final Shape out the door. Now, when you take an extra 4 months, that's 4 more months of development effort, paying all those, you know, 1,000 employees their salaries and all the other benefits that come with that. is very, very expensive. So adding another 4 months to your sort of expectations requires you to do exponentially better. And we were kind of expecting and hoping that the final shape would deliver numbers and metrics that would match that. But if the final shape sells technically less than Lightfall, then those extra 4 months that were took to make the final shape better maybe didn't pay off in the end in terms of proper budgeting. Obviously, there's no way to properly predict how successful the final shape will be, how much it will sell, and how profitable it will be. Obviously, the games industry can be extremely volatile. Some games can be wildly successful, and some games they can fall flat. Can be successful for a short period of time and then fall down, or vice versa. So there's never no guarantees in this type of thing. But obviously, Bungie was looking for the final shape to be even more successful than it was to maintain the massive budget that they have, and that's why so many different employees have been laid off. And it was due to the final shape. Even though it was such a success, it wasn't enough of a success. They needed it to be like a miracle almost. They needed it to just do like dumbfounded numbers, and it didn't. Like literally, Lightfall sold more copies, reportedly at least, than the final shape. Now we don't have the exact numbers of this because this is leaked information that's given to us by ex-Bungie employees. Now obviously ex-Bungie employees, that information can be, you know, misconstrued in some ways, but it would seem to be pretty solid overall. Especially if you look at the Steam charts and stuff, you can actually match things up quite a bit with the population of the final shape and the population of Lightfall and the decline and stuff like that. It actually does add up. And we obviously knew that the pre-orders for the final shape were very, very low. Well, beforehand, we reported on this. A lot of people said that that was, you know, just it was kind of a lowly thing to report on because the final shape was so far away and stuff like that. And people were trying to criticize me for actually reporting on that. But the reality was that the final shape numbers were, the pre-order numbers were actually quite low. And you can actually see that self-evident now with the arrival of final shape and its numbers comparative to Lightfall. So it didn't sell nearly as well as they needed it to. It did well. The final shape did well, but it didn't do as well as they needed it to do, considering their immense financial crisis. And then the next part is that Destiny 3 was never in development, which was very interesting. It wasn't that Destiny 3 or that codename Payback was stopped due to these layoffs. It's that they just weren't really, it wasn't in development in the first place. So keep that in mind, which was an interesting caveat to come to. Obviously, various different Bungie employees are coming out talking about this and stuff. So codename Payback was just meant to be some sort of Destiny spin-off. We don't know how far they were along in that project. At this point in time, that project has been fully shelved. It would be really cool to see what that project was. I mean, I don't know if any Bungie devs are going to actually be able to leak that information per se. Maybe they will. It seems like a lot of them are really just letting it all go right now and saying whatever they feel like. And so we'll see if they end up actually giving us the juicy details of what Payback was meant to be. And maybe Bungie at one point in time will come back to working on it. But as it stands right now, the game plan from all the different sources that I've seen in the news, and I'm obviously staying well connected to everything, is that Bungie is trying to push forward with making more Destiny 2 content in the new manner that we described, with these content packs and with 2 seasons within each of these content packs, and then pushing forward for the success of Marathon. And they're really hoping that both of these two are successful in tandem. And if they are, maybe then they will come back to Payback, and whatever Payback was meant to be, maybe then they'll come back to that Destiny spin-off that they were working on, and we'll see the full development of that. But that only, you know, that remains to be seen at this point in time. We don't know what will happen, but let me know your thoughts about all of this news down in the comments below. Some pretty crazy stuff, I know. And make sure to subscribe with notifications on. I'll keep you up to date on everything in the Destiny world. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.